Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Pride in Every Backpack, Parenting with Pride's third annual Parent Education Summit. Whether you are joining us here from the Panhandle, Central Florida, South Florida, where I am, or somewhere beyond our state, thank you for being here. We know your time is valuable, and we are so grateful that you have chosen to spend part of your day with us. My name is Jennifer Solomon. I use she, her pronouns, and I have the privilege of serving as Senior Manager of Parent and Family Support at Equality Florida and leading our Parenting with Pride program. But before any title, I am a mom. And so, like many of you, I have experienced the joy of watching my children grow, the uncertainty that comes with wanting to make all the right decisions, and the deep desire to make sure that they know they are loved exactly as they are. And that is why today is so important. As parents and caregivers, we spend a lot of time making sure our children have everything they need for the new school year. We fill their backpacks with notebooks, pencils, lunches, and supplies. But today, it's about filling our backpacks, and not with school supplies, but with knowledge, with confidence, with practical tools, and with community. We know that when parents feel prepared, our children are stronger for it. So whether today gives you one new resource, one new connection, or simply the reassurance that you are not walking this journey alone, I hope you feel leaving encouraged and supported, because that's exactly why we are here. One of the greatest gifts of this work is the incredible people you meet along the way. Every once in a while, you meet someone whose journey changes not only their own family, but countless others as well. I first met Jeanette and her family many years ago when my own child was still in preschool. At the time, I didn't know another family raising a gender creative child. Like so many parents, I was searching for someone who had walked this path before me. And then I met Jeanette. Long before there were resources and communities we have today, Jeanette and her family made the courageous decision to share their story with the world. They chose love over fear and authenticity over silence. By opening their lives to others, they gave countless parents hope that it was possible to support your child openly, proudly, and without apology. Their family's willingness to share their journey helped many of us feel a little less alone and showed us what unconditional love can look like. Many of you may recognize Jeanette from the TLC reality series I Am Jazz, where millions of viewers have watched her family's journey over the years. Others may know her through the beloved children's book I Am Jazz, which has become a meaningful resource for families, educators, and classrooms across the country. If you don't have this book, I highly recommend making it part of your child's library. For many children, it was one of the first books that helped them understand what it means to be transgender. And for many parents, it opened the door to conversations rooted in love, acceptance, and understanding. Over the years, Jeanette has become so much more than someone I admire. I'm honored to call her a friend, a fellow advocate, and most importantly, a fellow mama bear. She understands the joy, the worry, and the fierce love that comes with raising a child who deserves to be seen and celebrated and loved for exactly who they are. Today, many people know Jeanette as the mother of Jazz Jennings, but I know her as a parent who has never stopped showing up for her child. Whether speaking with lawmakers, supporting other families, or helping to create spaces where parents feel less alone, Jeanette has spent years reminding us that love is always the right place to begin. Today, it is my privilege to welcome not only an incredible advocate, but an extraordinary mother whose courage has helped pave the way for so many families, including my own. Rather than sitting behind two boxes on Zoom asking questions, we decided to structure this as a conversation between two moms. We're inviting you into the kind of conversation parents often have after everyone else has gone home. An honest, hopeful, and it's rooted in love. So I am so excited to welcome my friend, Jeanette Jennings.
Hi, everybody. It's such an honor to be here. I have to go like this because you make me all weepy.
I'm getting a little teary-eyed too.
Get that out of my system. All right, we're good.
Well, welcome. We are so happy that you are here. And before we dive in, again, I just want to say thank you, not only for joining us today, but for the example you have been for so many families, including mine. Years before many of us knew another family, you and your family were the ones we saw because you made that courageous decision to share your journey. And it was at a time when many families felt alone, and you really showed us what unconditional love looked like. And it was incredibly meaningful. My own child, Cooper, was still in preschool when I met you and Jazz. I remember thinking, here's a family that's doing this. They're living openly and lovingly. And so you gave us that hope simply by showing up as yourself. So it's not an interview today, but I do have some questions. And I'm just excited for us to have this conversation between two moms who know what it's like to love our kids fiercely. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. Before the television show, before interviews, before the advocacy, before the world knew who Jazz was, you were simply a mom raising a little girl. So I'm going to start with, what do you remember about those early years? And when did you first realize Jazz was showing you who she truly was?
Well, it's one of those things, go back in time, you know. Um, this is back in the early 2000s because Jazz is 26 years old now. Actually, 25, almost 26. I'm making her older than she was. Anyway, so early 2000, she was born in 2000. So I had already had three kids. I know, I already knew what being a mother was all about. And my surprise baby came, little Jazz. And she loved her older siblings, especially her older big sister. And we watched her grow and learn. And she had the two older brothers and the sister. And she would always gravitate towards the girly things. And we're very open-minded. We said, okay, it's just a phase. And then she'd kind of dance around the house. And as she became more and more verbal, she knew what a girl was. She knew what a boy was. And she said, I am a girl. Not, I like girly things like mom, daddy. I am a girl. There's been a mistake here. I'm like my sister. I'm not like my brothers. And literally, she started this and she was still in diapers. I have pictures of her teething and holding on to a little doll. So, what mom is going to understand this? What dad isn't going to understand this? But in our hearts, we just wanted her to be happy. And I'm like, all right, so I'll have a gay son because I didn't know what the word transgender was until I sought help. Because after a while, I'm like, this is not a phase. Phases end, and it was getting stronger and stronger. And then she was in distress. We wouldn't let her out of the house with a dress on, and she'd like lay in front of the front door crying, "Please, mommy, please, daddy, let me wear the dress." And one day I took her to Publix, and she still had her shorter hair, and she was wearing a dress. And one of the ladies, the cashier, said, "What a pretty little girl." These were like the early years. Like we didn't know anybody. And when I did get help, I finally met a transgender adult, and I learned the word what transgender was for the very first time. So, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anyone that had a child like mine, but I just wanted to listen to the specialists, like the doctors, professionals. I didn't, we didn't just dive into this and say, hey, we have this child and we're just going to let her be whoever she wants to be. We knew that it was more than that. And back then it was called gender identity disorder. And now it's gender dysphoria. And we were told, Jazz has gender identity disorder, which is, really scary. What is that? I don't know what that is, but we did research and there was nothing, there was no internet like there is now. So I go to get a book like What to Expect or How to, Raise Your Transgender Preschooler. Nothing. There was nothing out there. So, it was like the Wild West, I call it. But yeah, we just knew in our hearts we wanted to make this child happy. And that's all that mattered to us.
I love that. I love that you shared, because I think there's a lot of parents watching today who are maybe in those like very early moments, and they're trying to understand their child and wondering if they're asking the right questions and hoping they make the right decisions. And I remember even with my child, Googling late at night. I have a little boy who's wearing a dress because there's not that much. There's so much more now because of you and also others. There's so much more now for families coming into those early days. But I think that fear and that wondering, are we doing the right thing? I remember thinking like, well, do I allow him to wear that Elsa dress out of the house, or am I setting him up to be bullied? Or if I don't, am I not allowing him to be who he is? So I think that probably rings true for so many folks watching today. We all just want to make the right decisions. I wish there was a handbook, right, when our kids are born that says, when they get to this point, this is what you should do. But but there isn't. So we all just do the best. And I love how you phrase that. We just like love our kids. So that brings me to like another part of your story that I think is especially meaningful for families joining us today, because you raised Jazz here in Florida. And long before headlines and court decisions, you were already navigating questions that so many of our families are facing today. And one of those was sports, because Jazz loved soccer. So can you take us back to those years and what it was like to help your daughter participate in something she loved while navigating questions about, acceptance and belonging and inclusion?
Yeah, it was such a long time ago, and but it feels like yesterday because we were so worried, knowing we had a transgender kid, and some people in the community knew and some didn't, and she just wanted to play sports with her friends. And as 5-year-olds, they have co-ed, but when she headed, into first grade, suddenly it's girls and boys. And we were so worried when we signed her up for the girls' team that they'd say, no, 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 she has to play with the boys, and this is recreational soccer. So we did kind of a bad thing. We took her birth certificate and kind of just put a coffee cup over where the gender marker was. And like there was a little stain there because they're really not looking for the gender marker back then. They're 5, 6, they're looking for the age groups. Let's make sure we don't have a 6-year-old playing with 12-year-olds or vice versa. So we got away with that for a while, but then word came out. There's this little boy and playing with the little girls, and somebody's going to get hurt. And so there was actually a gang of moms that told their kids, you need to boycott. When it's time to play soccer, you're all going to sit down in the field because we're not going to have this little boy hurt our little girls. I heard this through the grapevine, but it didn't come to fruition, thank goodness. And Jazz continued to play, but word got out, hey, there's this transgender child or little boy, and then they told us, we can't play anymore. So Jazz went to travel soccer. Thought, okay, there they actually welcomed her and said, we don't care, she's trans, let her play, with the girls, it doesn't matter. But then, Florida, the higher ups caught wind of this and they said, oh no, we're not going to have this little boy playing. And they banned her. They banned her. And I said, but before you ban her, let's look at a picture of the team. We're going to send you a picture of this team. You point out who the little boy is. And they had no idea. They had no idea. And they said, we're very, very sorry. She cannot play with the girls. She must play with the boys. And if she wants to play with the girls, she can sit, during practice on the bench and watch them play with the games, and participate. When they do play, she's got to be, removed or whatever the case may be. So we said, all right, let's sign her up to play with the boys. Let's see how it goes. And she was literally traumatized. This poor little girl, like she stood in the field and she was like picking at her hands and, we're like, anxiety, let's just get her off the field. It was very bad for her. She didn't want to be around the boys. Gross, disgusting, farting, burping, whatever. We pulled her from that and we fought. We fought really, really hard. And we took it all the way up to the top level with soccer. To not just the state, but the federal level. And they didn't realize it was this little 11-year-old girl, because it started when she was like 8 till 11, she couldn't play. That there was this child all these years that was not playing, and they took our side. And in fact, back then, they changed the policy to include all transgender soccer players, not just this little child. So we thought, we're on the right path here. Things are going to get better, and more kids are going to be able to play. And, we were at a point in our life where like, this is going to work. This is really going to work out for her. And it did for many years until we hit like high school. And then there was tennis, and we had to be proactive with that. And she was benched for a little while for that until we organized it. So, even back then, there was problems with, transgender youth playing on the wrong team, so to speak. So, we just persevered. We pushed so hard and fought, and we were successful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. As I'm listening, I'm finding myself smiling because although our families had different experiences, you were spending your weekends on soccer fields. I'm spending mine in dance studios, but the hope is exactly the same. We want our kids to experience the joy of childhood, to make friends, to discover what they love, to build confidence, and to feel like they belonged. And, whether your child loves soccer or dance or theater, robotics, any of those, I think every parent watching understands that feeling. And for so many of us, those moments shaped, something bigger, because somewhere along the way, we stopped thinking of ourselves as just parents and we became advocates, right? You just wanted Jazz to play soccer and like every other child on the team. And I don't think either one of us ever set out to be advocates. I don't know about you, but I do not remember filling out an application for that job. I simply wanted my child to love. I wanted to love my child, and I wanted them to have all the opportunities of every other child. And I'm guessing, and I know you feel the same way. So my question for you, and you kind of touched on how you started that advocacy, but how did your journey as Jazz's mom shape the advocate that you've become? And was there a moment when you realized like your story wasn't just helping Jazz, but it was helping other families as well?
Yeah. Well, you kind of fall into this backwards. I just wanted to be a mom, raise my kids, and I didn't have a choice. Like this was very, very difficult. And I knew that there were other kids out there like Jazz. And the advocacy really started with the media, which, we never wanted to be a part of media. People thought, oh, yeah, they want to be on TV. Heck no, that is not a fun thing to do. But ABC News found out about us. Through an article. We did a local article because Jazz's elementary school was not going to let her go to school as a girl. So we put pressure on the school by doing this article. We didn't show faces, we didn't use names. And they felt that pressure and they said, okay, Jazz can go to school, but she must, dress, in sort of like the boyish way, but like with a skirt on. So anyway, this is how we first started fighting the fight for her with the school. But that article got picked up by the Village Voice in Manhattan, and ABC News tracked us down through our attorney, and they said, hey, we want to do this piece with you. We've never heard of a child like Jazz, and, I think it could help a lot of people. And we were like, absolutely not. We're not going to put a 6-year-old on national television. And, this is just not a good thing. But they pushed and pushed and said, we will do it any way you want. You set the tone. And my husband, being the smart man that he is, he's like, we will do the 2020 piece only with Barbara Walters. That's it. Because she had the credibility, in this early 2000s. And we did this show, and it's called groundbreaking now. But at the time, I had no idea how many other families there were because right at that time we started, and this is where the advocacy comes in, we started a foundation called the Trans Kids Purple Rainbow Foundation. And through that and other avenues, because I was part of a few little online groups, suddenly I'm like, we're not alone. There are these other families, and we opened the doors for them, and I felt like, we were doing the right thing, sharing our story. It was hard putting ourselves out there, but afterwards, I got letters from moms that said, my child wouldn't be alive today if we hadn't seen your stories, if you hadn't shared your stories. So I know it's all worth the exposure and all that, because we did help a lot of people. And then, of course, it snowballed and we started doing more and more media. But that was the very start of like, I'm going to be this mom and I'm going to fight. I'm going to help other moms. I want to take it all on. And I did. I really jumped into the advocacy activist role at that point because I did want to help so many other people that were struggling, families and kids, hurting, just really hurting out there. So that's where it all began.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important reminder for people watching today because most parents don't come looking to become, advocates. They come looking for answers, and somewhere along the way, they find their voice. And that honestly, that leads perfectly into my next question. If we could invite every parent, every ally, every educator watching today to sit down with us over a cup of coffee, what would you want them to know? So maybe they're at the beginning of their journey and they're overwhelmed and they're scared because we all know what that looks like at the very beginning. And maybe they're simply trying to be the best parent they can, but they're doubting themselves as we often do. You have been there. I mean, Jazz is, a grown up, like you said. I mean, she has marked the way for so many. And I just want to say that the book, I Am Jazz, has helped so many children because it's a children's book and kids can see themselves there. For so many children, that was the book that allowed them to find the language to explain to their parents who they are. So what would you say to parents, that are simply just trying to be the best parents they are?
Yeah, I've talked to all sorts of parents. Some of them are there, some of them aren't quite there, some of them are fighting it. And I always say, parent the child you have, not parent the child you wish you had. So a lot of people have in mind, this is, my son, I want him to play baseball or, opposite type of thing. And I'm always like, you know what, just live and learn and listen to them. I know they're little, a lot of people like, oh, how could you listen to a little kid? But these aren't, kids like everybody else. These are special little kids, and these are kids that do have gender dysphoria. So you can't just like treat them like everybody else. You have to give them that special consideration that it is a tough world out there. And as parents, you worry, what are people thinking? What are people saying? But you follow your child's lead. This is what I was told years and years ago by doctors when she was little. Don't try to fit her into that box. Don't try to make her be somebody that she's not. Just love and learn and continue learning and giving back to other people as well along the way. But I would say it's very scary. Of course, it's really scary. But rely on people in your community. Rely on family members. Go on to Facebook or other support groups. Find other parents because sometimes the other parents are the greatest help. And I know for me, little 3-year-old Jazz, I went online and I was searching for groups. It's really nothing. And I did find one group of parents, and they all had older kids. Maybe the youngest one next to little 3-year-old Jazz was like 7 or 8. And I'm like, well, does anybody need just, know what to do with a transgender preschooler? Is there anybody out there, with a kid going into kindergarten who's trans? And there was nobody. So they all came to my rescue, and I said, I have this little kid, and these parents just loved me and supported me and said, you know what, Jeanette, you are the youngest in our group, but we know you feel like us. And they just made me feel like I was doing the right thing. And other parents, without them, I don't know where I would be today, honestly. Back in 2003, 2004. Thank you. Thank you. Some of them my soul know today, and I'm always going to be grateful. So yeah, tap into your community, tap into loved ones. Sometimes people aren't supportive, but really, I love my mama bears, my other mama bears for sure.
I love that. Yeah, I will tell you that's honestly, if there's one thing that Parenting with Pride has taught me, it's that hope grows in community. And we have 4,000 members or folks that are part of our Parenting with Pride community, and I felt that it was so important because not everybody has those resources. If you're coming to us from a small town, in Florida or somewhere else, and you don't know another parent that is a child, we want to make sure that you feel the love and that you're not alone, because I do agree that it is so powerful, the love and the support that you get from others that are kind of maybe even a little bit ahead of you in that journey. But just to know you're not alone, I think is huge. So all right, so here's my question. After everything that your family has experienced, what gives you hope today?
What definitely gives me hope is that we all know we're on the right side of history. There's all this, the political climate out there is a really, really scary thing right now. And, we moving forward. And politically, they say, this, that, and the other thing. But I don't believe we're moving backwards. We're just at a place right now where it's very, very difficult. But you have to look and say, they can say whatever they want about transgender people. We know the truth. We know how marvelous these kids are and how bright and funny and artistic. I feel that transgender people are some of the best people I've ever met. And, to take that, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, with the right side of history. I
Nope,
said
you're
I'm
good.
60 and okay. The hope. The hope is that I've been here a very, very long time, and I've seen kids evolve, and I've seen the families evolve, and I've seen these kids grow up to be magnificent adults and go on and help society. So I know there's more and more of these kids, and even though it's much more difficult now, they're true to themselves, their families are true, the families would do anything they can for them. And because of the families and because of all the other kids, we are there. We're at a place. It's just the rest of the world is still catching up. And right now, yeah, negativity for sure, but we know that comes from a political place. But just remember, these are the kids that are going to be the adults that are continuing to fight. And I can't wait to see that when, they come out and they are standing on the podium speaking to a full group of people about their experiences and what they went through to help other people. So paying it forward is really important, even though I will say, there are some definitely dark times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think, yeah, hope in seeing our kids and knowing that they're going to be the ones making the laws and they're going to be the ones, in our future is so powerful. All right, I have one quick last question.
Mhm.
What has jazz taught you about love?
Well, we can all say this, it's that unconditional love, which everybody says, but I am a better person. I don't know who I was before Jazz. She was okay, but I like myself a lot better now. She has taught me. She has made me the person that I am today, and I'm truly grateful. She says, Mom, Dad, I'm grateful for you. And I'm like, no, I'm grateful for you. And I get all weepy, but it's hard. It's really, really hard. And our family has faced, a lot of challenges, but they say, those challenges come at you, but it makes you stronger. The haters are motivators. Like, don't listen to people. Don't listen to others. You stay with your community, listen to her. Who cares what the neighbors think? We don't because we know we're right. And I just want everybody to move forward knowing that we're all here for you. Jen's here for you. I'm here for you. I'm accessible. So if ever anybody needs anything, I will be there. And I have one other thing that I wrote down, if you don't mind, because I knew I'd forget it. Okay, so I wrote this down, and I will remember it. So memorize it. Jazz has taught me that love means accepting someone for exactly who they are, not who you expect them to be, which I kind of said before. She showed me that when you lead with unconditional love, empathy, and acceptance, your family just doesn't survive challenges. It grows stronger because of that. And I would never remember that. So we're not just surviving, we are growing stronger and we're going to do this together. And like I said, I'm there for you. So keep doing the great work, Jen. Everybody, just keep moving forward. You are doing a fantastic job. And I'm grateful for you, all of you.
Well, Jeanette, thank you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your friendship. And thank you for sharing your family with all of us. And I get emotional too because I've been told the same thing, like, oh, your child's so lucky to have you. But the truth is these kids are incredible and they have shown us who we are and what we can do. So thank you. Thank you for reminding us that while none of us have all the answers, we can lead with love. And that's always enough to begin with. So thank you for
Mhm.
being here.
You're very welcome. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Bye bye.